My name is Mark Tricklebank, and I'm a research fellow here in the Centre for Neuroimaging Sciences at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience, King's College in London. I was a very shy child, and a lot of children, disabled children, severely disabled children, used to walk down my street, and these were children with things like Down syndrome and cerebral palsy, so they had difficulty moving, they had difficulty talking, but they were friendly, and they were friendly to me, and I was friendly to them. And this sort of spurred a real interest in medicine. We used to have an encyclopedia at home, and I used to love the pictures of what people were like inside, you know. And we had neighbours who were long-term ill. One had a kidney disease, and it was wonderful the day she got her kidney dialysis machine, and I wanted to understand how it worked. This just spurred an interest in science in general with me. I went to the same school as my sister, and her boyfriend was very into science. He wanted to do chemistry, and we used to lark about making liquid sulphur, things like that. Playing with mercury, all the dreadful things that you should never do, you know. Yeah. But it was great fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. And he went off to university, but he didn't stick at it, and he left after a year, which was a shame because he was a bright guy. But he did encourage me a lot to be interested in chemistry, and I was particularly interested in biochemistry because I liked plants and wanted to understand how these things worked. I had a passion for wanting to know how things worked, radios, and my bedroom was full of old radios that I used to tune into all sorts of remote places and listen to the Morse code, you know, you could in those days. I got 7 O levels and won the prize in chemistry, which was good. And went on to do A levels in chemistry, physics and biology. And loved the thought that I was doing those 3 subjects. I took my A levels, and I know I didn't do very well in them. You know, I knew after I'd completed the exams.
Right, yeah.
I used to get really stressed about doing the practicals.
Oh, right.
And I think that's what brought me down. Anyway, I ended up with a C and 2 E's and didn't get into university. So I looked around for other courses, and I found that you could do external London university degrees at various colleges in London. There were some colleges that actually offered internal degrees of London University as well, which I thought would be better. And there was one at the West Ham College of Technology in Stratford, East 15, and there you could do 2 subjects. You could do a joint degree. So I thought, why don't I do biochemistry and psychology?
Yeah.
You know, that'd be really cool. So I applied for that, and they said, yes, you can do that. You've got the minimum requirements. You've got 2 A levels you can do. So that's what I did. I've had a career in drug discovery, working for the pharmaceutical industry. The way I got to that was simply because I got a degree in psychology and biochemistry, but it was a 2-2. That wasn't brilliant, but at least I got it. So I was always disappointed that the lecturers didn't try to merge the two subjects. I wanted to know about the biochemistry of the brain.
And they don't talk about just.
And they never talked
biochemistry,
about that
just-
at all. It was talked about,
just in general.
liver,
Yeah.
liver metabolism. And then I saw an advert for a master's degree in neurochemistry at the Institute of Psychiatry, which of course was, the place to be if you were studying psychology. I think they saw, somebody got biochemistry and psychology, that these individuals were quite rare, and I started just down the road there as a master's student, 1970. But again, I was disappointed because they were treating the brain as like liver. They're very interested in carbohydrate metabolism.
Not so much about psychology.
Not about psychology or psychiatry in particular, which is what interested me. This was part of the Postgraduate Medical Federation at the time, which was joined with the Institute of Neurology at Queen Square and the Institute of Ophthalmology, and you could do a project, a master's project in any one of the institutes. And I knew that the one at the Institute of Neurology, there was a lab there that was interested in neurotransmitter metabolism. And I thought that's a bit more interesting. And I went up to see the lab, and there was these trays of little brown bottles, trays and trays stacked one on top of the other, and they were full of bottles of LSD. And I thought, wow. And I did my project on serotonin metabolism, and serotonin is very much involved in LSD. It's an indole like serotonin. So that was great. I was really excited to be at Queen Square as well. The top place for neurology in the country. Fantastic. And I did my project on response to serotonin metabolism to stress, and that worked out quite well. It was an interesting project, and I was looking to do a PhD, thinking I was good enough to do that. Well, if I can do it in a master's, why can't I do a PhD? And my professor was quite enthusiastic to help me. He was a nice man. He told me about a lab in Manchester called the Department of Child Health, and it was interested in developmental neurobiology and the response of the brain to stress in the early life. So I moved up to Manchester and started, and it was great. It was really good. And I teamed up with a paediatrician called Stephen D'Souza, who was a very nice man, and he was interested in serotonin metabolism because there was a paper that showed that children with intellectual disability had low levels of serotonin in the blood.
Right.
And nobody knew why or what the consequences of that were. So I sort of moved my PhD around to thinking more about serotonin metabolism in development, but in intellectual disability. And my first ever publication was on serotonin metabolism in Down syndrome, which I felt, to those kids that used to speak nicely to you, at least I'm doing something for you, even if I didn't know what it was. And we found a deficit in serotonin, and but not in the metabolite of serotonin. So 5-HT was low, but the breakdown product of 5-HT was not low. So there was something about the control of the metabolism that possibly could be fixed. And that led me into pharmacology as a, what drugs are available that might influence serotonin metabolism, and could we use those to overcome the deficit? So my PhD came to an end after 3 years. I had my exam. My examiner was the professor who first introduced me to serotonin at Queen Square, and he was overjoyed.
He must have been really proud of you.
Yeah, I guess he was really. I'd taken his ideas and,
Yeah.
you know, so. But then was, well, what do you do next, you know? How are you going to get a job? At the time, this was sort of Margaret Thatcher's era, and investment in education was zero. People were being made redundant left, right and centre. I wanted an academic career, and that was very hard to get, so the alternative was to go into industry. So I saw an advertisement for a company in Strasbourg in France. Well, you know, this can't be too bad if it's industrial establishment, but they're still doing research that's getting published in the right journals. And I went along and I met the head of pharmacology there. It was a man called John Fossard, who was well known for his work in serotonin, but from a cardiovascular perspective. And he said, well, if you come here, don't think you're going to work on serotonin. And I spent the next 4 years working on what? Serotonin.
Yeah.
And it was just at the time when serotonin receptor subtypes had been discovered, and John had got this compound called 8-hydroxy-D-PAT, and he thought it was a very unusual compound because it induced the serotonin syndrome at very low doses, and yet it wasn't a 5-HT2 receptor agonist. So how the hell could he be doing it? So he said, that's your job. Find out how that's doing that. And I just systematically went through the list, and first thing that I found was that almost everything I used blocked the expression of the syndrome. I thought, how the hell am I going to work this out if this is the case? And the trick was to deplete the brain of serotonin before you gave the compounds, I should say. And it all worked out absolutely beautifully. And we published that in the European Journal of Pharmacology, and it is my most highly cited paper, even to this day. And it did work out very well. Stood the test of time. 5 years down the line, people had selective 5-HT1A antagonists, which blocked all the behaviours that I was interested in. It was true, it was real. Don't be put off by people who give you negative responses. If it's what you want to do, you can do it.